Hello everyone. I'm very happy to have you back on my channel. Before we move on to what happens next, let's take a moment to look back at everything that has happened so far. In the previous episode, Hai and his mother, Mrs. Thoa, were continuously confronted with unusual incidents. Things that at first might have only raised a slight suspicion, but over time, gradually became clearer, like a chain of events carefully arranged. Starting from the appearance of a strange woman, with no clear identity, no clear purpose, standing in front of their house, saying words filled with hidden meanings, not directly threatening, but every sentence carried a feeling that could not be taken lightly. Then came the late-night phone calls, with no one on the other end, no response at all, just long stretches of silence, enough to make anyone uneasy. Warning notes appearing mysteriously, no one knew when they were placed, and the feeling that there was always a pair of eyes watching their every step. All of these things, at first, they seemed disconnected, but when put together, they formed a picture full of pressure, and clearly not a coincidence. Things started to become more serious when Mrs. Thoa got into a minor accident on the road. An incident that seemed completely ordinary, something that could happen to anyone. But in this situation, it made Hai unable to ignore it. It wasn't a major collision, but it was enough to weigh heavily on his mind. Because when small things keep happening, they are no longer small. And then a strange message appeared. No sender name, no explanation, just a photo. A picture of Mrs. Thoa taken from a distance, as if the person was secretly watching her. At that very moment, Hai realized something. This was no longer a coincidence. It was a targeted action. Intentional, calculated, and planned in advance. But what troubled him the most was not what was happening, but the fact that he had no idea who was behind all of this. No name, no face, had ever appeared clearly. Only a feeling that some force was silently controlling everything. And the story continues from here. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in their small house was no longer the same. The calmness was gone. The familiar peace had disappeared, replaced instead by a heavy tension that was hard to describe. Mrs. Thoa still tried to maintain a normal appearance, still lived her daily life, still talked, still smiled. But if you looked closely, her eyes no longer held the same peace as before. It wasn't obvious fear, but a quiet anxiety, always present, yet impossible to express. As for Hai, he was never someone who talked much, but his silence carried countless thoughts. Inside his mind was a tangle of ideas, questions without answers, assumptions, possibilities, all overlapping each other. He began observing everything more carefully. Every small detail, every subtle change. Nothing escaped his attention. Footsteps echoing in the small alley, even if just passing by, caught his notice. Strange looks from people who seemed unrelated were remembered. Cars that stopped longer than usual near his house became suspicious signs. All these seemingly trivial things in this situation could no longer be ignored. One afternoon, as the sunlight softened, Hai stood in front of his house, as a habit, but also as vigilance. And then he saw that woman again. No surprise, no panic, just a familiar feeling. but deeply uncomfortable. She appeared. Not hurried. Not avoiding. But walked toward him. Slowly. As if she already knew. He would be there. You still don't understand? Her voice rang out. Not loud. Not harsh. But cold enough to make the surrounding air seem to freeze. Hai looked straight at her. No avoidance. No retreat. Who are you? The question was simple. But clear. A silence followed. Not long. But enough to build tension. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile. No trace of goodwill. But a smile. As if it had been calculated beforehand. Who I am doesn't matter. She spoke slowly. Each word. Clear. What matters is. A slight pause. But enough to create pressure. You should know your place. Hai did not respond immediately. He clenched his hand slightly. As if holding on to his composure. What do you want? This time. There were no more vague words. The woman's gaze became sharper. Colder. Clearer. Stay away from Mr.Trung. Don't investigate. Don't be curious. And never think about acknowledging him. Her words came out. Firmly. Without hesitation. The space around them seemed completely silent. Hai stood there. Without a strong reaction. Without showing fear. Only. In his eyes. There was a change. A realization. Slowly. But clearly forming. Everything that had happened. The signs. The warnings. The chain of events. None of it was accidental. They all came from one thing. Mr.Trung. A name. That until now. He had never even met. Hai exhaled softly. Not out of exhaustion. But as if confirming his thoughts. So, everything is because of that. The woman looked at him. She did not deny it. She did not avoid it. Yes. A short answer. But enough to confirm everything. And if you want your mother to stay safe. Her voice lowered. But the pressure increased. Then remember what I said today. That was not just a reminder. It was a clear threat. An ultimatum. With no second option. No further explanation. No additional details. She turned her back. Walked away. Slowly. Decisively. And disappeared from sight. Leaving behind a long, lingering silence. A silence. As if signaling that everything was only just beginning. That night, Hai sat outside in the yard for a very long time. A quiet stillness surrounded everything. No voices. No specific actions. Only him. And the thoughts constantly moving in his mind. The faint yellow light from inside the house spilled out. Not bright enough to push away the darkness. But enough to reveal the deep contemplation in his eyes. He looked straight ahead. But it seemed he wasn't really looking at anything specific. Instead, he was looking into uncertainties. Questions without answers. Connections he had just begun to notice. But still could not fully understand. Everything that had happened that day remained vivid in his mind. Every word. Every glance. Every small detail. As if replaying again. Not loud. But enough to keep him from feeling at ease. Tiểu San stepped outside. The door opened softly. Without making much noise. As if she didn't want to break the silence. She saw Hai. Still sitting there. In the same position. But she didn't rush to ask. Didn't rush to approach. Didn't interrupt his thoughts. She simply walked over gently. Her eyes carried no blame. Didn't force him to decide. She didn't rush to give advice. Just a gaze, filled with understanding. There are things. She spoke slowly, as if choosing each word. Knowing them doesn't always make things better. Hai turned to look at her. For the first time since the conversation began, his eyes left the empty distance and focused on someone real. Aren't you afraid? The question wasn't a test, but a genuine concern. Tiểu San gently shook her head. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she refused to avoid it. I am, she answered honestly, without hiding. But what scares me the most? A slight pause. Soft, but enough to make the next words clearer. Is you having to go through this alone? Not a grand promise. Not something dramatic. Just a simple companionship. Yet enough to ease the heaviness in someone else's heart. Hai lowered his head. Not out of weakness, but as if thinking more deeply about what he had just heard. After a while, he spoke. His voice slow. Low. But clear. I don't need anything from them. No money. No status. Not even a father. A brief pause. Small. But heavy. It's too late. His voice softened. Not from lack of confidence, but because it wasn't easy to say. I only need a simple sentence, but the most important one. My mother, to be at peace. That night, there were not many more words, but there were things that had become clearer. The next morning, no hesitation, no delay. Hai took the initiative to text the unknown number. No extra words. No circling around. Just one message. I won't look for Mr.Trung. I won't acknowledge him. But from now on, don't appear in front of me and my mother again. The message was sent. Short. Clear. Like a decision. Carefully made. Not long after, the phone vibrated. A reply appeared. Not long. No explanation. Keep your word. Just 3 words. But carrying a clear meaning. Nothing more was needed. A temporary ending for what had happened. And also a silence. Opening the way for what lies ahead. Those days that followed. Everything didn't change all at once. There was no clear turning point. No single moment that marked a shift. But little by little, through the smallest details, everything slowly returned to its original state of peace. No more strange phone calls in the late night. No more unsettling silence on the other end. No more sudden tension every time the phone vibrated. No more unfamiliar footsteps outside the alley. No more lingering gazes that made one turn back. No more cars stopping for too long, as if waiting for something. All the things that once made Hai alert to every detail, now gradually disappeared. Quietly. Without leaving any clear trace. Simply gone. The small house, once filled with tension, now slowly became lighter. The heavy atmosphere faded. The long silences filled with worry disappeared, replaced by familiar routines, ordinary rhythms of life. Mrs. Thoa, who once tried to hide her unease, now, her eyes gradually regained their calm. No more distant stares. No more long moments of quiet contemplation. Instead, there was relief. A sense of peace. Hard to describe in words, but clearly felt. Perhaps it wasn't because everything had been explained, nor because all the answers were known, but simply because nothing was happening anymore. One afternoon, as sunlight gently spread across the yard, the three of them sat together. No grand conversations. Nothing extraordinary. Just simple words. Small, everyday stories. Soft laughter. Not loud, but enough to create warmth. The sunlight wasn't harsh. Not too bright. Just gentle. Enough to illuminate everything around. Enough to make the space feel comfortable. Hai sat there, looking at his mother, who had gone through so much worry recently. Then he looked at Tiểu San, who had stayed by his side when he didn't know what to do. Nothing needed to be said, but in that look, there was gratitude. There are things that cannot be measured in words, cannot be explained with clear reasons, yet hold immense value. And there are things he chose to let go. Not because he wasn't strong enough to face them. Not because he wanted to run away. But because he had come to understand, after everything that had happened, what truly mattered. The past, no matter what it was, is still a part of life. It cannot be erased, cannot be changed. But it doesn't mean it must be carried forever. Some memories can be kept as part of who we are, but there are also things that must be set down so they don't weigh on the present. And sometimes, choosing not to move forward is not giving up. It is simply another way to protect what matters most. Somewhere, no one knows exactly where, Mr.Trung may still be searching, still holding on to hope that one day they might meet again, might talk, might make up for what once had no chance to exist. But he doesn't know that somewhere else there is someone who has made his own choice, not turning away out of resentment, not avoiding out of hatred, but simply choosing not to step into that life. A choice, quiet, without explanation, yet very clear. It is not a denial of the past, nor a rejection of a part of oneself, but a way to preserve peace for the present. And so, the story comes to a close. No dramatic climax, no unexpected twists, just an ending built from a decision carefully thought through, deeply considered. And perhaps, because of that, it feels complete in its own way. If you followed the story until now and felt something within it, don't forget to like, leave a heart, and subscribe to the channel to continue supporting me. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If it were you, would you face the past or protect the present like Hai did? Thank you all for taking the time to watch, and see you again in the next stories.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa tới một video nữa về câu chuyện của Tiểu San và Hải nha mọi người. Thực ra thì câu chuyện hôm nay không xoay quanh Tiểu San và Hải, nó thì xoay quanh về Hải nhiều hơn và ít nhắc đến Tiểu San. Câu chuyện hôm nay thì kể về cái vấn đề là vợ của ông Trung. Ông Trung thì mọi người xem nhiều video cũng đã biết là thực ra ông ấy chính là bố ruột của Hải, và cả hai đều chưa có thể gặp lại nhau đấy, chưa có thể nhận lại nhau. Vậy thì liệu diễn biến tiếp theo câu chuyện sẽ ra sao khi người vợ của ông Trung hiện tại đã phát hiện ra sự có mặt của Hải và bà Thoa, và để ngăn chặn việc mà tài sản của mình sẽ bị tẩu táng hay là ông Trung sẽ chia tài sản cho Hải, thì bà đã tìm mọi cách để ngăn cản, cũng như là thậm chí còn gây nguy hiểm cho bà Thoa và Hải, và họ đã thực hiện một giao kèo. Vậy diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ ra sao? Mời mọi người đón xem những tập tiếp theo trên kênh của mình nhé. Tạm biệt.